In this video, I'm going to be making my first ever Valorant edit on Premiere Pro, which actually took me almost 3 hours to make. First of all, I made my sequence and I chose to go with 20 frames per second. I think it's a nice balanced frame rate to go with, not too choppy and not too overly smooth. I did the basics, add my audio, import my clips, and then I placed markers, which didn't actually help, so I got rid of them. I feel like markers can get in the way sometimes. And then I just went through my clip and began Twixtoring it. Now, keep in mind, the clips that I am editing right now are 60 frames per second. The original clips I downloaded were, I think, at 600 frames per second, with some being at 240. So I re-encoded them at 60 frames per second, and the reason why is simple. Lag. My sequence was lagging and it made it impossible to edit, so I had to cut down the frame rate, which didn't actually help. So I decided to try another method. I imported the original clips at 600 frames per second, which is absurdly high. However, the reason why they are at 600 frames per second is because they have been frame interpolated, I don't know if I said that right, through flow frames, and as a result there is less warp and distortion when you time remap, or even Twixtor in this case. I tried going through so many methods. As you can see, I tried to nest the clip itself so that the sequence is at 600 frames per second. That didn't work and it just wasted so much time, until I remembered time remapping is a built-in feature. Why not use that? So I spent the next 20 or 30 minutes trying to figure out how to time remap, because I don't use this feature anymore. I always use Twixtor because, well, time remapping on Premiere is not the best. The graphs are very limiting, unlike on Twixtor where you can fully customize them. So yeah, that didn't work. And then I remembered I had made a few edits in the past, not on Valorant, but on, I don't really remember which game because I haven't played it. I think it was Call of Duty, I don't know which one. As I said, I haven't played the games, but I did make an edit a long time ago. So yeah, I opened up the project file because I was in a similar situation. The clips I used on this edit were also at a high frame rate. I'm not sure if they were 600, but it was still pretty high. So I wanted to see how did I Twixtor them. So I opened it up, checked the settings. Okay, that said 20. Open up the sequence again. It says 20 again. What's going on? I'm so confused. And then I realized the clip was slowed down from 100% to 5%, which I believe, I don't know if I calculated this right, leaves it at 120 frames per second. And by slowing down the actual clip, I've stretched out its duration without affecting the actual sequence frame rate, which was left at 20. Perfect. That matches my main sequence. That was it. That was the method I used, and it works incredibly well. So I did it again. Third time is the charm. I slowed down my clip, nested it, applied Twixtor, and it worked. As always, I used frame number to be more precise. It was a long process, but once that was over, this was the result. I am just as surprised as you are. It looks perfect, except it's lagging. 600 FPS clips, Twixtor plugin, that leaves Premiere Pro on its deathbed. So what I did was I exported the entire sequence, and then after that I re-imported the clip and started doing the actual editing, starting off with shakes. As always, I've said this before, I use warp transform to make my shakes. One problem is, across my edits they all look the same, which I need to figure out a solution to, maybe by pairing it with more effects. But yeah, I just went through my sequence and added effects. I mean, that's what editing is, right? I'm going to be going over some key effects, or at least effects that look really interesting. So for example, here you can see I'm using BCC Polar Displacement, which is similar to displacement map if you have used that before. I think that displacement map is more about the X and Y axes, which is up, down, left, and right. However, with polar displacement, it's back and forth. Or would it be forwards and backwards? I think that makes more sense. So on the Z or Z axis, if you're American, using this effect, I wanted to create a transition that's almost like morphs over to my other clip. It's hard to explain until you actually see it in action. I tried using echo, but it didn't really look that good. Sometimes it does. So I decided to get rid of it. Tried to play around with scan lines, but it didn't look too good. I think it stood out too much. So just like echo, got rid of it. Oh, and here, I like this part. I used Posterize, and you know what's interesting? I think in my last video, which was similar to this one that you're watching. It's like a watch me edit kind of video, even though you're not actually watching me edit, at least in real time. But basically what I said in that video was you can use Posterize to create transitions. I wasn't really sure what I meant by that, but I tried to do it in this edit and it kind of worked, I guess. I managed to create some sort of glitch effect transition. I'm just saying a bunch of words at this point, but yeah, I made something cool, which is nice. Towards the end, I wanted to create a hyper zoom, so again, I used blur motion, grabbed 3 random frames and put them together, and as a result, I have a hyper zoom. Wow. Okay, so for this part, I used BCC RGB Displacement Dissolve. Even though there was already a lot going on, I felt like it looked a bit flat, and this effect looks kind of glitchy, so yeah, I thought it would be a good choice. However, it is quite strong, so I kept the keyframes close to each other so that it wasn't too strong. Later on, I brought back scan lines again because I wanted to create a transition, and even though it didn't really work as a transition, it still looked good, especially when using the opacity of the adjustment layer itself, as well as the settings of the scan line effect. Oh, and spiral blur. I just keep on spamming this effect. If it looks good, it looks good, and it actually does work most of the time. In this case, it clearly didn't because I got rid of them. More keyframes using warp transform, playing around with the shift XY, and what else? Rotate. I've got some advice. If your shakes look a bit bland, add some flavor, aka add some distortion. So in this case, I added on warp bubble. You can add on Sapphire distort or distort chroma, any similar effects that add on movement, and also make sure that the frequency is low, so something around 2. I don't know if these count as 1 framers because they're on 2 frames. So maybe it's a 4 frame, sorry, a 4 framer? Maybe it's a 2 framer. The mosaic effect never gets old. It's perfect for glitches. Anyways, here's the rest of the recording because there is so much going on. My brain is going to burst if I explain anything else. All I did was finish off the shakes. So I played around with warp transform, added on blur directional to replicate motion blur because Premiere doesn't have motion blur built in. Thank you, Premiere. And this was the part I was talking about where I kind of just spam blur directional, no, not blur directional, spiral blur. And then I was also playing around with lumetri color and exposure with no clear goal in mind. But that's the fun about editing. Keep experimenting and eventually you'll figure it out. Okay, so for this final part, I didn't really know what to do. Like there was just this empty bit left. So I got rid of it and then I re-imported the Twixtor clips, reversed it, and I think I sped it up, which resulted in a really cool reverse effect. At first I was a bit annoyed because I didn't have any clips left and I didn't really want to Twixtor anymore. It had been like 3 hours, I was done. So I just did that, reversed them, added on an adjustment layer and blur motion. I then keyframed it so then the blur gradually builds up until it reached the end, and this was done to make it loop. Now you're probably here for the result. First of all, quick warning, there is a chance I'm going to cut out the audio because copyright. If there's any audio missing, then I'm sorry, but at least you know what happened. And there you have it, a Valorant edit made on Premiere Pro in about 3 hours, which could have been 2 or even 1 if I knew how to Twixtor properly. Members, thank you very much for your monthly support as always. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Peace.